Hi everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp and to the series where Glen and I sit down in a nice comfy chair, well mine's quite comfy, don't know about yours, and we talk about some interesting games we've been playing on Switch.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks since we've done this one actually, isn't it?
Too long.
Have popped up. Too long, yeah, for sure. So yeah, 3 games each that we've been playing recently. New games, old games, good games, bad games, doesn't really matter, just interesting games for some reason.
Now there's savings you can make on physical or digital purchases, all the information is in the description, as well as the Joy-Cons Nixie that we use on the channel. So what are the interesting games we've been playing? Well, let's find out. If you've been gaming for a long time, then you'll definitely have heard of the Dungeon Hunter series. Dungeon Hunter 6 is now out, and it's the latest installment in the hack and slash mobile game, which is completely free to play, featuring both player versus enemy or player versus player. I'm pretty sure I was in a guild in one of the older games, so it is nice to see that guilds have made a return, including guild raids for that multiplayer experience. There's also a QR code on the screen if you want to scan that or click the link to download it. But they've switched up the formula a little bit here. It's not just killing bosses, there's a unique mechanism, but you end up being able to loot, ride, and then fly them, and also summon them. In fact, up to 3. They'll follow you around or perform combo skills. And if that's not enough, you can shapeshift into them. We play a lot of games, and yeah, it's not a mechanism I've seen before and actually works really well. Throw in the fact that there are 100 different bosses to fight, as well as a load of new classes, it really does start to blur the lines between mobile and console gaming. Visually, the same thing applies. The 3D engine is looking great. So as I said at the start, if you enjoy this channel and you want to support us, then try out the game. Click the link in the description or use the on-screen QR code. You'll get a starter pack worth $50 that includes 10 summoning spells, 1 SSR lieutenant known as Demonic Wolf, and 1 accessory pack. And if you're an early bird, then you'll be there in time for the launch Lucky Spin, which will use your game account, and you can win things like an iPhone 15 Pro Max, PS5, Apple Watch, which kicks off today. So yeah, click the link and support the channel. Thanks very much for those guys for sponsoring this episode.
Okay, the first one I want to talk about then is one that came out relatively recently, within the last week or so. It's a game called Sunshine Manor.
Yeah, so Sunshine Manor is like a top-down... Is it an RPG or is it an adventure? It's obviously a bit of a horror themed.
Yeah, it's horror-themed adventure game, top-down adventure game, as you say. Although it does have elements, or at least reminds me to some extent, of an old-school point-and-click.
Yes.
So you'll basically, to start at the beginning, so there's a performer, this man that wants to do children's TV shows, and he's just not very good at it, or he's not very successful at it, and he's told his show's going to be cancelled. And he visits a fortune teller who basically says that you can have everything you want, you'll be as famous as you want to be, as long as you... She says like you have to give it all back or something like that.
Yeah.
Very vague on the old word in there. Then it cuts to a scene a few years later, he's wildly successful, and then he's visited by this fortune teller who basically says like it's time to pay.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to many years later still, and there's obviously been an incident in this house. It looks like his son might have been killed by him, you don't know. And these children are on Halloween daring each other to go and knock on the door.
Yes, I remember now. I thought it was really good, the story actually. I thought the way obviously there was nothing unique in the way it was told at the beginning, but actually the storyline was quite intriguing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it reminded me of things like Halloween, Michael Myers.
Yes.
Obviously with the flip being it's the dad, not the son, that does, the murder. But it had that sort of feel to it.
Yes.
And cutting years later, I think it actually cuts to 1980, which would have been around about the time of Halloween, 1978, so a couple of years later. But, it just had that feel to it. You have that autumnal setting where you go and, knock on the old decrepit door. Anyway, so they go inside the house. There are 3 girls that are the characters, and then 2 of them are taken by a spirit.
Yeah.
And you're left with this one girl that obviously you play as. And the reason I said it reminded me of a point-and-click game, reminded me a little bit of Maniac Mansion. I don't know if you ever played that.
Yeah, of course. Absolute classic.
Yeah, for sure. And it had just had a feel that it had the humour of that.
Yeah.
The way that some of the locations, like the kitchens and stuff that you'd visit, you spoke to ghosts, you met ghosts in the house, and you needed to do something for them to free them and, eventually hopefully break the curse. So like the first one you meet is a chef.
Right.
And you have to find his spatula. So it's a bit of walking around and, clicking on things, lots of little references to the 80s and stuff. It's like an Atari in one of the rooms and stuff. And when you find that item for them, you then flip and go into like the demon world.
Okay.
So you can't attack as such, but you have like an aura about you, like this power that you press Y to unleash. And if there's a spirit in your vicinity, it will stun them.
Right.
Or banish them for a minute, and then you can get away. And yeah, so then you obviously have to do something within this new demon world, and you're transported back and you find the next person and so on,
Yeah, so I got to basically where I was. Every now and then a spirit would come and chase me.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was in the start area, just come and then you either run away or you can, like you say, do that ability to get rid of them.
I think that's the main demon,
Right,
and
okay.
they show up every so often, like sporadically, and you can stun them and they'll disappear. But there are other enemies that are obviously not quite as strong, but the same rules apply. It's a decent game actually.
Seems good,
I've been
doesn't it?
enjoying it. Yeah, it's I mean you get like a pearl or a crystal or something whenever you finish one of those demon sections, and up the top in the top left hand corner, I think it's either 5 or 6. So I'm assuming that's how many you need to get, because it fills a space every time you get one.
Yeah.
And then there's normally like an end area, isn't there, or something you have to do after that. So yeah, so far it's it's quite an interesting mix of sort of adventure game and point and click, I guess.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I can't believe you mentioned Maniac Mansion.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. Because the sequel to that was Day of the Tentacle,
It
wasn't
was,
it?
yeah.
Oh, I love that game so much.
Yeah.
But we haven't got that on Switch, have we?
No, it was on the Day of the Tentacle was on the Vita and the PlayStation Store, I guess.
Okay.
And you could, if you completed it, you
Yeah.
unlocked Maniac Mansion, which was cool.
Because you could play Maniac Mansion in Day of the Tentacle on one of the versions, I'm sure. I'm sure there was like an arcade cabinet or something that you could find.
Oh, right.
I'm sure there was. I'm almost positive on my Amiga or something, there was a way of playing the older game.
Because I think I'm right in saying that one of the characters from Mansion is in Tentacle.
Yeah.
It's loosely linked, isn't it? And there are a few references, but
Definitely.
yeah, good games.
Absolute classic. Absolute classic. Brilliant. All right. I want to talk about Only Way Up.
Okay.
And I was kind of briefly trying to explain to Glen earlier on about the viral game Only Up, which came out on PC. It was created by, I hope I'm right here. Either way, it was a younger person who'd had quite a difficult life, had grown up in like the favelas and all of this.
Okay.
And actually had a bit of storytelling in the game. All you have to do is go up.
Okay.
And what you had was it released, and there were a couple of streamers that started playing it on their streams.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly frustrating. So when you fall down, because you can spend an hour climbing and then fall all the way to the ground.
Oh, wow.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
So it was obviously very enticing to watch, because you have these big times giving it all the beans.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Falling down, and it's just a good laugh. And
Right.
watching them scream, like people were crying on stream and stuff.
God damn it.
So Only Way Up, I wasn't at all surprised to see it. It comes from one of those, how do we say it nicely? One of those publishers that releases absolute crap.
That's a nice way of saying it.
Yeah, I probably could have thought that one through. But yeah, those ones that keep churning out games that are like other games.
The classic shovelware.
But I'm thinking to myself, they can't get this too wrong, right? Because
Right.
all you got to do is build a load of boxes and stuff that you jump on and have you go up to the sky.
So it's physics based then. It's not like a platformer. It's
Exactly
like a,
right. So it's first person. You're like not first person. It's third person.
Third person,
Controlling your character, and you're just jumping up from box to box,
okay.
like ladders. There'll be like a flying random helicopter, just a load of sky toot.
I see, right.
And you climb up it, and then when you fall down, you got to start again.
I'm with you. Okay.
It sounds like the least fun game ever, doesn't it?
For me, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like no, that sounds like purgatory or something. Like for the rest of your life, you must just try and get up and fall back down again. You know.
In this one, you've got like a load of different stages, because in Only Up, you just had this one level, and it just honestly took like 3 or 4 hours just to get to the top. If you were human, if you were like these crazy ninjas, you could get all the way up there. But you got all these different stages. There are checkpoints in this one, so when you reach a checkpoint, you can actually go back to that checkpoint. But because the game's so badly coded, like there's no real way of getting back to that checkpoint successfully every time.
Right.
Sometimes you fall down and it'll be like, do you want to go back? You're like, yes, please. And other times it just tough
leaves
luck.
you languishing down there.
Exactly. You're just staring back up longingly, at that last platform. But the annoying thing about it is it's still fun.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. I spent a good couple of hours on this yesterday. I thought I was going to do 10 minutes and give it the whole I bought this so you don't treatment. It's £4.50. I did most of that in gold coins.
Yeah.
And I actually enjoyed it. But it is rubbish, I have to say. The thing with Only Up is it had like a climb mechanic, so that if you get the ledge, you kind of pull yourself up.
Yeah.
Here, you kind of get the ledge, and where there would be the animation, it kind of glitches up.
Right.
It just goes meh. And then you'll see in the footage, it looks like absolute pants, but it's annoyingly still quite fun.
I can understand that. There are these games that scratch an itch.
Yeah,
aren't
it
there?
does,
and
yeah.
if the original isn't available,
Yep.
it does enough to satisfy you, even if it's begrudgingly.
It's exactly begrudgingly, yeah. That's exactly right. It puts in its defence. It does put a few things in that aren't in that other game. You can get power-ups, like you get these wings that allow you to just have one flap, because when you fall in that other game, it's over.
Right.
With the wings, you can just do one and then get yourself back on the
Okay,
platform,
all right.
or glide slowly down.
Yeah.
I'm so begrudged to say anything positive, but I feel like, you know, we like to be fair and balanced, and I did quite enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do understand it. I do get it. You know, there have been games that I've been like that with.
Yeah.
Where you feel like you shouldn't be liking it.
Yeah.
You look at it, it looks like absolute pony.
Yeah.
Controls like crap. I'm not saying this one does, but you know, maybe it does. But it's something about it that keeps you coming back, and
really
you feel ashamed of yourself for feeling that way, you know.
I wish I kind of got you to have a go, because you'd understand like exactly, and I reckon you'd have probably got quite high on it as well, and then been like, oh, this is actually quite good. Yeah, so that's Only Way Up, complete clone of Only Up, but not as good, but still manages to be vaguely intriguing.
So you have, or had, Only Up, Only Way Up.
Only Way Up.
So now we need The Only Way Is Up, featuring Yaz, just to complete the trilogy. Wonder who would make the soundtrack.
You, Glen. Oh, brilliant.
Right, my second game then was one we've been playing actually on a Friday night, and that's the original Borderlands.
Great game. It's funny actually, it's one of those that I've heard a lot of people saying, I can't play it, it's unplayable.
On the Switch.
Right. I don't understand what unplayable means anymore.
No, clearly I don't then, because I'd never played it before anywhere else, and we've been playing it, and it's been fine.
It's been really, really good. Like it's funny, isn't it? Even now, we've managed to find people online on the Switch version, which is quite. I mean, it says a lot about the game. You know, there's still quite an active online community. So if you need people to play with to do the online, it does tend to be quite a few people on there. So it's a first-person RPG shooter, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I never played it before. I don't play a huge amount of first-person shooters, but the ones that I do generally play or have played are much more linear in respect of level-based or objective-based. Don't get me wrong, this does have objectives, but even the way you come about them, you kind of find these stations, don't you? And accept the quests, and then you can just go where you want and take on any quest that you've got unlocked in that particular area. So it was quite interesting for me to play a first-person shooter that was so different in some ways, you know?
Yeah, I like that. I really like the freedom it gives you, because essentially you could go towards the end game areas, but obviously we tried to go with a group of us, didn't we, that had a few newer players.
Yep.
And we got absolutely destroyed in one of the higher rank areas. Then you come back with a purple, like a legendary gun, and just annihilate everyone.
Yeah, even that part of it, because again, when I play games, it's weird how games affect different people, isn't it? I struggle in games, as silly as the word struggle will sound in this context, when you're given lots of stuff. You know, like games like Torchlight, where you're constantly finding loot, and obviously you need to send it back to base and cash in, or you upgrade your gear or whatever. I just get to a point where I've got so much hoarded on me because I don't know what to do with it, and this game is kind of like that, in that you're constantly finding new weapons. And I kind of had to, you know, train myself to drop stuff and pick stuff up and make that decision, you know?
Yes. Yeah, there's constant decisions, like you say, the ranks and the prices of the gear. It's funny, the old loot systems in games, isn't it? A few modern games have started to just give you infinite inventories.
Yeah.
And it hasn't, for me, negatively impacted the game too much. I quite like being able to just grab everything, sell everything you can.
Yeah.
I do get it. And in this one, you can upgrade your backpack size. So, you know, there is the option there.
Yeah.
But having experienced a game that just let me take everything recently, and it didn't negatively hinder the game. In fact, it was quite nice.
Yeah, I can see why some people would prefer that old school way of, like Skyrim, isn't it, with the weight system?
Of course, yeah.
You know, that which I really struggle with. You know, when you pick up a beer mat and all of a sudden you can't move anymore. It's like, oh, all right, that was a heavy old beer mat, that one, wasn't it? You know, but I get it. You know, it's fair enough, and it's nice to have sort of both systems in games, and when you come across one, the trials and tribulations you face because of it, I do sometimes enjoy that. It puts you out of your comfort zone. Yeah. As silly as that sounds, I'm not even talking about the shooting or the missions. I'm talking about literally the inventory system, but just the ways that different games, you know, portray these sort of things. Yeah. It gives you something new to think about, you know? It
does, and actually here, you don't have any of that, like, you're over encumbered, you have to walk at 3 miles an hour kind of thing, you know? Although most people do walk at 3 miles an hour, so that's a terrible example. Let's go for 0.3. But yeah, it's still active, it's still live. If you're about on a Friday in the UK, you should, ping us a message and join us, because we're always looking for a couple of extra players, aren't we?
Yeah, we're making good grounds through it. We've done, what did we do? Zombie Army 4 was the last one. Before that we did Remnant. So this will be the next one.
Yeah, we did a ton of Sunbreak, didn't we?
We did, yeah. So, it's good. We enjoyed it.
Okay, next up for me then, I guarantee you won't have heard of this.
Okay, go
I
on.
think, unless I've said it, then you will have heard of it.
Right.
But you know Microids?
Yep.
They actually release a load of games with very often not much fanfare.
Yeah.
You know, they'll just put something out and you'll look on the eShop and go, oh, that looks nice. I wouldn't mind giving that a go. They released this game called Dolphin Spirit.
Right. No, I've not heard of that one. No, I must say.
You basically like on this island, and it takes a few elements from a few different games that I've played in the last year or so. You've got to take photos of wildlife, things like that. You've got to clear up the island, and you've got to do missions and quests and bits. There's nothing like, I would say, massively unique about the way it works, but actually it's really enjoyable.
Right.
Super chill, you know, one of those where you can spend ages trying to get the right picture of a seagull or something.
Yeah, there was a game, or two games actually, on the Wii called Endless Ocean, obviously 1 and 2, which sounds similar.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed, I think I played the second one, I forget now, but whatever one it was, as you say, very calming, very relaxing. You could just lose a decent chunk of time, you know, ultimately not doing a whole lot, you know?
Yeah, exactly right. So there are a load of missions where you go under the ocean as well. So you leave the island, you'll be sent under the ocean, and you've got to like take a photo of something or help a certain piece of wildlife. And then as you do these things and take your photos, it will then give you, I don't know, almost like an encyclopedia. Not an encyclopedia, that sounds really boring. It gives you a bit of information around that. So it might tell you a bit about the habitat under the sea that you're looking at.
Yeah.
You know, it's obviously designed to give kids a bit more kind of info and feedback.
Yeah.
But it really does remind me, it gives me those like, Endless Ocean is a great example.
Yeah.
That's one that I've actually played. It does give you that kind of feeling. You'll have like dolphins swimming around you and stuff. And you forget that you're actually doing anything specific, you know, you just end up swimming around, and then that you head back to the island and get different quests and things. It's just got a really nice atmosphere to it.
Yeah.
And I was surprised by like how well it ran. I like the art style on it. I just had never heard of it before.
I like Microids as a publisher. I've got to say, they're a French team, aren't they?
Yes.
And they release a lot of licensed properties as games. And I've said before, just in videos, that I'm very much as you would be, of those licensed video games based on movies.
Yeah.
That were 9 times out of 10 terrible, but you have that nostalgia of being able to play something in your home that you'd seen in the cinema. And they release quite a few, and they're good games. You know, things like the Poirot games, and they did one based on Vertigo, didn't they? Like the Hitchcock film.
It was a good game.
Just quite obscure licenses, but they're decent games, you know?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like, you go to play them and you're kind of expecting a level of, I said this nicely, jankiness.
Yeah.
And you might find a few little quirks, but generally the presentation's better than, like, you know, 8 out of 10 other Switch games that are released at the moment.
Yeah, they did. Again, they do a lot of the, like the Franco-Belgian comics, things like the Smurfs. And
Tintin and all of that.
Tintin, yeah, exactly right. Those sort of ones as well. But yeah, no, they're decent. I like their games. And this one, Mark's literally having a go on it as we're talking. And I do find it funny with games based around the ocean or the sea, because on the one hand you've got this, which obviously you know, as you're seeing on the footage now, you're underwater, very serene, beautiful settings, and then you've got something like Dredge, where you're on top and you're dreading what's underneath. Yeah. You know, I love how different a game you could make based on the same concept.
Yeah. And it's funny, isn't it? Because the ocean's one of those areas that we don't know much about, really, in the grand scheme of things. We know more about space than we do about the deep ocean.
Yeah.
So there's still that real element of mystery about it. And it's fun to play a game in that environment.
It is. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Well, look, there's a lovely turtle. You see him? There he is.
There he is, look. He's got a mask on.
Has he?
Or a nunchuck.
Oh, gullible me.
Right, my last game then is one that's been out a while, but I've only recently played it because it's only recently, as far as I know at least, had a physical release, or a widespread physical release, and that's Loop Hero.
Loop Hero is a great game.
Yeah, really, really enjoying it.
Yeah. Such a weird concept, isn't it?
It's very strange, and when you first start, I mean, I knew a bit about it. It's not like I bought it completely blind, but even with that knowledge, I was kind of like, okay, well, how does this work then? Do you know, like it takes a while to get to understand it. But it is very much as the title would imply. You make loops of an area, and every time you go past base, so to speak, you can leave with your loot, or you can stay and keep going. And it's basically like a roguelite, isn't it? Where you open up more of this area by laying tiles or cards rather, that become tiles on the screen every time you do an action, and it will open the world up. It will create monsters. It will create mountains or greenery, and these will all give you perks and buffs and things that make you stronger.
Yeah.
And then you fight a boss.
Really, probably one of the hardest games I've ever had to review.
Yeah.
Because articulating it is almost impossible.
Very difficult, yeah.
So like Glen says, yeah, the things that you place then add enemies and things into that loop. So there is a bit of a balance and a risk and a reward, because the more things that are defeated and things, you'll get more. It is a roguelite, isn't it?
It is.
You'll get more kind of reward, I guess, that you can then build up that town.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just the reward, but in terms of just that one run, that one loop, the only way you can make the boss appear is by laying enough of the cards with things like enemies.
Yes.
That his bar fills up to the point where he then appears.
Yeah.
So you can't play it as safe as you might like to, but then you can equip armor and weapons and stuff that increase your health or your, it's just a very interesting concept, and it's executed almost to perfection.
Yes.
This is so well executed.
I'd say this would be, I think I might have mentioned it in an Addictive Games video.
I'm sure you would.
It has that like loop.
One more loop, yeah, exactly right. But yeah, it's brilliant. And then there are different classes that you can unlock. So you start as a warrior, I think I'm right in saying, then there's a thief. And as Mark alluded to earlier, you go back, as you end a run, however that may be, by defeating the boss or calling time, you go back to a town, and then you use the resources that you found or been given to build that town up, and that can unlock new paths or new it's like a skill tree, isn't it, almost?
Yes.
Gives you new abilities, new passive abilities, but also new characters. Like there's a thief and there's a something else and there's something else, and that's your new run, your new loop. You can use one of those characters. Yeah,
it's good. It's got some really nice progression. But yeah, I do think it is one that a lot of people would look at in the stills and go, no thanks, or even in this video.
Yeah, no, I'm sure, because it has it's just a very obscure looking game. I mean, that's what drew me to it, actually, because again, we've mentioned a few times, it plays nothing like this, don't get me wrong, but in terms of a screenshot, it looked like Megalomania. Yeah, that's like, like top-down, square-based environment, lots of grey. It looked like Megalomania, and I was like, wow, what is that? And then read up on it, and it's not anything like that, but it did enough that I was like, I want to get that.
That reminds me, I must pick up the Megalomania Evercade disc that you were talking about.
Yeah.
I need that.
Yeah, it's the Mega Drive version on there, but it's nice to just have a blast of it,
good. I can still hear all the voices.
Yeah, it's a Codemasters one.
Okay.
Despite the fact it was Sensible software that made it, I think Codemasters acquired them.
That makes sense.
So it's under their banner now, but that's where you'll find it.
All right. Okay, my last one then, is a game I finished again the other day, a couple of days ago, is Beyond a Steel Sky. The sequel from was it Westwood to the first game, Beneath a Steel Sky, back on the Amiga. I originally played it. I think it was on a few other platforms, probably Commodore and some other places. I think it had I don't know if it was this one, but you used to have 5 discs per game back in the day.
Right. Yeah.
But this one took everything into the 3D, which is, I think, it's always a difficult move, and sometimes not necessary, in my opinion. For them to do that, where they go, right, well, it's a newer game, let's put it in 3D. You can almost hear the meat in it. It needs to look different. People like Double Fine, who did the Monkey Island games, if you go back to Ron Gilbert and all of that, their latest releases took on a very distinct new art style, but it was still 2D point and click adventure. And I really liked that, that jump. But then there were a lot of people that were moaning, it doesn't look modern enough. And actually, if they knew their stuff, they would know that back on, I think it was PlayStation, there was a 3D Monkey Island that was episodic, and it was absolute trash.
Yeah, I think it might have been on the Wii as well.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah, for me, it didn't work quite the same. It was, in fairness, it was back when 3D graphics were a little bit clunky, in terms of things like animation and stuff, so it didn't carry across quite the... You look at something like Curse of Monkey Island, and it was just... It's like perfection. Anyway, so let's talk about Beyond the Steel Sky. Obviously just roll credits on it, and overall I really like the story. I think they managed to... There were things in Beneath the Steel Sky, like there's this thing called the Link Terminal, and you kind of go into this cyber world, and there were some puzzles in there, and they're always so obscure. I remember as a child I was like, what on earth is this about? They've kind of watered it down a little bit, and funnily enough, back in the day when you were a kid, you'd go to school and chat to your mates because everyone would be playing. There weren't that many games out. So you'd always find someone that was playing it, and you'd be like, hey, I'm stuck on this bit, and you kind of chat it through. I remember this kid writing me a page guide, and I took it home on a piece of paper, and it was so good to get past that bit. But this time around, and a lot of adventures do this now, they incorporate a hint system. So you go into the menu and you can have a look at one hint. It'll be like, why don't you try and get this to happen.
Yeah.
And then if you wait 30 seconds, you can then get another hint, and so on and so forth.
So it basically tells you.
You could, you could have it tell you everything. There were a couple of times, I must admit, I did use a little hint and stuff, just because it doesn't give you like a waypoint. There's no like options, you know, to see what. So very often that first hint is like your waypoint.
Yeah.
It's like go and make sure you get this or whatever. And I really, it's interesting as well because like a lot of the voice actors are the same. So it's those people that you kind of grew up hearing.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
You're hearing them again, and it's like almost timeless in that regard, you know?
Yeah.
You feel like they haven't aged behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's funny what that does. Because if you think of something like, let's say like a Michael Bay Transformers movie, whenever that came out, like 07, whatever, I forget now, but whenever that came out, obviously Pete Cullen still did Optimus Prime's voice from back in the 80s in the cartoon.
Yeah.
And as much as I don't actually like the movie, just hearing that voice again, you're like, you know, Optimus is here, you know, Autobots roll out, let's do this, you know.
Pete Cullen, I didn't know that was his name.
Yeah, Peter Cullen, yeah. You had Frank Welker did Megatron, although he didn't do his voice in the film. Hugo Weaving did it because they felt that Welker's voice had aged, which is a shame, but yeah. Nothing to do with this, apologies, but...
this is what the series is all about. It's a little chinwag, isn't it? So yeah, in this one, the differentiating mechanic, and I was pleased to see them try something new, and I think it's actually very clever, is they basically built in this, you've got this little hacking device. You've got this, haven't you, this game?
Yeah, I haven't played it, but I've got it,
Yeah. You've got a little hacking device, and a lot of the puzzles are basically like algorithm based. So you could stand in an area and it would say like 3 on your device, and any machines in that area, you can access their systems.
All right, yeah.
So there'll be like a gate that's shut, you know, and you'll have a coffee machine over there, and you might take like the open command from the coffee machine, move it into the gate, switch them over.
Oh, that's cool, yeah.
Yeah, and it'll be like,
clever.
The gate will be like, if you have access, do this. If you don't have access, do this. So you'd put open over there.
Right.
So you go over, I don't have access, and it opens up.
Yeah.
And it's really good. It gets more complex. And I love that basically I don't think it's spoiling it, the end game really requires you to use every aspect of that.
Yeah.
And it's, I really enjoyed it. Kind of reminded me a bit of Tron at the end there. No spoilers.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, you talking about going to school and talking about a game and finding a solution or, you know, a part you were stuck on. I remember playing Super Mario Brothers 2, you know, the one with the vegetables and very different to the other Mario games, and being stuck on the Birdo boss. Pink dinosaur with the bow in its head. And I went to school, I was like, how do you beat this? Like, this thing keeps throwing eggs at me. And my mate was like, you have to jump on the egg, pick it up and throw it back. And you're like, for the rest of the day, this is 9 o'clock in the morning, you're like, I want to go home. I need to play this game, you know, I need to get past that bit.
There's something to be said for having to wait for the things that you enjoy, isn't there?
For sure.
None of that like Netflix on demand. No, you have to wait a week to watch the next episode, and it turns out to be rubbish.
Yeah, and just spoils everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. Those were the days.
There you go. So yeah, I think that's the end, isn't it?
That's 6 games, yeah. That's it.
That's 6 games. Do let us know in the comments, as always, what you've been playing. We do find it very interesting. There's always those little gems. There's a ton of other ones that we'll talk about in the next episode. We might have maybe another episode in, you know, a bit sooner than before to kind of fill in the gap, because I've got a load more that I want to talk about. But yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. As Mark said at the beginning, if you are looking to pick any games up and you want some eShop credit, don't forget to use our website, switchup.gg. You will get yourself 5% back in cash back of your purchase price and another 5% in straight discount if you use the code SwitchUp. And there's a link down there to PlayAsia. If you're wanting to import anything, use the link, use the code, and you get yourself 5% off your order from there. A quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.